The first thing Jake Morrison noticed was the coffee getting cold in his cup. He had been watching the radar screen for 6 hours straight at Denver International Airport, and nothing unusual ever happened during the night shift. The green dots on his screen showed the same boring pattern they always did. A few cargo planes heading west, some red-eye flights carrying tired passengers, and the usual military traffic that never asked questions and never gave answers. But then something changed. Jake leaned forward in his chair and rubbed his eyes. 3 new dots had appeared on his screen, but they were not moving like normal aircraft. They were perfectly still, hanging in the sky about 50 miles above Colorado Springs. The radar showed them as massive objects bigger than any plane he had ever seen, much bigger. "Hey, Carol," Jake called to his supervisor. "Come look at this." Carol Williams walked over, carrying her own cup of coffee. She was a 20-year veteran of air traffic control and had seen everything from lost private pilots to emergency military flights. But when she looked at Jake's screen, her face went pale. "What the hell are those?" she whispered. Jake tried to contact the objects using standard radio frequencies. "Unknown aircraft at coordinates 39.2 north, 104.8 west. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Double quotes. Nothing. He tried again, this time using emergency frequencies. Still nothing. Carol grabbed the red phone that connected directly to NORAD. "This is Denver Control. We have 3 large unidentified objects on radar. They are not responding to radio contact and appear to be stationary at 50,000 feet. Within minutes, similar calls were coming in from around the world. London reported 12 objects over the English Channel. Tokyo saw 8 massive shapes blocking out the stars. Sydney counted 5 enormous shadows over the harbor. New York had 3 objects so large they could be seen from the ground, even in the city lights. At the same time, 200 miles above Earth, Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at the blue and green planet. Below, his forearms were folded behind his back, and his black eyes showed no emotion. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 43 worlds in the past century, and this one looked like it would be the easiest yet. "Intelligence report," he said in his deep voice, his second-in-command. Officer Kleinix activated a holographic display. "The species calls themselves humans. They have barely mastered basic space travel. Their most advanced weapons are primitive nuclear devices. They have no unified government and spend most of their time fighting each other over resources and territory." Vextar nodded. "Population? Approximately 8 billion individuals across 7 continents. They are physically weak, live short lives, and have no natural defenses. Our weapons will easily penetrate their crude armor and defensive systems." "Perfect," Vextar said. "Deploy the first wave. Use standard intimidation protocol. They will surrender within 1 of their hours." The commander looked at his fleet of 300 ships. Each one was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, capable of destroying entire cities with a single plasma blast. The humans had nothing that could even scratch the paint on his vessels. On Earth, President Lisa Campbell was pulled from her bed at 3:47 a.m. by her Secret Service detail. She was rushed to the White House Situation Room, where General Pete Rodriguez was already waiting with a room full of military advisors and intelligence officials. "Madam President," General Rodriguez said, "we have a situation. Unknown aircraft have appeared over major cities worldwide. They are not responding to communications and appear to be of non-human origin." President Campbell looked at the wall of monitors showing radar feeds from around the globe. Each screen showed the same thing, large objects hanging motionless in the sky, too big to be any known aircraft. "Are we sure they're not ours?" she asked. "Absolutely certain," Rodriguez replied. "These objects are using technology we don't understand. They appeared simultaneously across 6 continents without any radar signature during approach. That's impossible with current human technology. What do they want? Unknown. They haven't made any attempt to communicate." That changed 30 seconds. Later. Every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth suddenly carried the same signal. A deep mechanical voice spoke in broken English, as if the words were being translated by a machine that didn't quite understand human language. Humans of Earth, I am Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet is now property of the Empire. You will surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. Those who comply will be allowed to live as workers. Those who resist will be eliminated. The message repeated in dozens of languages, broadcasting on every frequency and every device capable of receiving a signal. In the Situation Room, everyone was silent. President Campbell looked around the table at her advisors. These were people who had spent their lives preparing for every possible threat to America and the world. Nuclear war, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, economic collapse. But no one had prepared for this. Options? She asked. We could try to communicate, suggested Secretary of State Helen Walsh. Maybe negotiate. With what? General Rodriguez asked. They just told us we're their property now. What about the military response? President Campbell asked. We can try, but our intelligence suggests their technology is far beyond ours. A direct confrontation might result in massive casualties. President Campbell stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Washington, D.C. In a few hours. People would wake up and start their normal day. They would go to work, take their kids to school, and worry about ordinary things like paying bills and traffic jams. They had no idea that their world had just changed forever. She turned back to the room. Get me every world leader on the phone. NATO, the UN, Russia, China, everyone. If these aliens think they can just show up and take our planet, they're about to learn something about humanity. 30 minutes later, President Campbell stood before a bank of cameras. Behind her, flags from every nation on Earth had been hastily arranged. The message she was about to deliver had been agreed upon by every major world leader in a conference call that lasted exactly 12 minutes. To the alien force currently occupying Earth's airspace, she began, we have received your message. We have discussed your demands. And we have prepared our response. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Come and take it. The message was broadcast on every frequency in every language. To every corner of the Earth, it was picked up by the alien ships and translated by their computers. When Commander Vexstar heard the response, he felt something he had never experienced. In 40 years of conquest, confusion, in his experience, primitive species begged for mercy. They offered tribute, they surrendered their leaders, they did anything to avoid destruction. They did not issue challenges. Sir, Officer Kleinig said, perhaps there was a translation error. No, Vexstar replied slowly. I believe they understood perfectly. For the first time in the history of the Zephyrian Empire, a species had looked at their overwhelming military superiority and said no. The first hour was about to begin. Commander Vexstar stared at the translation display for a full minute. In 40 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to a surrender demand with what appeared to be a challenge. His tactical computer had analyzed the human response and confirmed it was not a request for a negotiation or a plea for mercy, it was a direct refusal. Sir, Officer Kleinig said nervously, perhaps we should deploy the demonstration protocol. Vexstar nodded slowly. Every species needed to see the power of the Zephyrian Empire before they understood the futility of resistance. Select 3 major population centers. Prepare the plasma cannons for surface bombardment. We will remove 1 square mile from each city. That should convince them. 3 massive ships broke formation and moved into position. The first hovered over New York City, casting a shadow across Manhattan. The second positioned itself above London, its hull reflecting the morning sun. The third descended toward Tokyo, its engines humming with barely contained energy. On the ground, people stopped what they were doing and looked up. Traffic came to a standstill. In Times Square, tourists and locals alike pulled out their phones and started recording. The ship above them was so large it blocked out the sun, its dark metal surface stretching from one end of the city to the other. At Camp Pendleton in California, Marine Captain Amy Watson stood in the command center watching the news feeds. She had been a Marine for 12 years, had served in 3 combat zones, and had trained for every possible threat to American soil. But this was different. This was not a human enemy with human weapons and human weaknesses. "Captain, Sergeant," Bill Murphy called from his communications station, "we're getting reports from all over the world. These things are positioning themselves over major cities." Amy watched the screen showing the ship over Los Angeles. It was only 50 miles away. Close enough that she could see its shadow on the horizon. The alien vessel was the size of a small city, and it was just floating there like it owned the sky. "What are our orders?" Sergeant Murphy asked. "Right now, we watch and wait," Amy replied. But she was already thinking about weapons, about tactics, about how to fight an enemy that could fly. But get everyone ready. If these things make one hostile move, we hit them with everything we have. At MIT, Dr. Ben Carter was in his laboratory studying the electromagnetic readings from the alien ships. As a physicist specializing in energy systems, he was fascinated by the technology. The ships were generating massive amounts of electromagnetic energy, far more than they needed for simple flight. "Interesting," he muttered, adjusting his equipment. The readings were off the charts. Whatever these ships used for power, it was creating electromagnetic signatures that could be detected. From hundreds of miles away, his phone rang. It was his old friend at the Pentagon, Colonel Jane Foster. "Ben, we need your brain. These alien ships are using some kind of energy system we don't understand. Can you figure out how to hurt them?" Ben looked at his readings again. "Jane, these things are broadcasting their exact location to every radar, satellite, and detection system on the planet. It might as well be wearing neon signs. If we can lock onto their electromagnetic signature, we can target them. How quickly can you get that information to our missile systems?" "Give me 20 minutes. Above New York, the lead Zephyrian ship began to charge its plasma cannon. The weapon was designed to glass entire city blocks, turning buildings and people into melted slag. It was the Empire's standard method of demonstrating superior firepower, Commander. Vexstar watched the targeting display as his ship aimed at a section of Manhattan. The humans below seemed to be standing around looking up at his vessel, probably in awe of its size and power. Some were even pointing small devices at his ship, likely primitive recording equipment. "Target acquired," his weapons officer reported. "Firing in 10 seconds. The plasma cannon began to glow with deadly energy. In 10 seconds, Times Square would be a smoking crater, and the humans would understand the price of defiance, but something unexpected happened. Every military satellite in Earth's orbit suddenly turned toward the alien ships. At the same time, missile silos across 6 continents began opening their doors. Nuclear submarines surfaced in oceans around the world. Fighter jets scrambled from air bases on every continent. Dr. Ben Carter had not only figured out how to target the alien ships, he had uploaded the targeting data to every military system on Earth, the electromagnetic signatures from the Zephyrian vessels were so strong that every radar-guided weapon on the planet could lock onto them. "Sir," Officer Kleinik said urgently, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be powering up weapon systems." Vexstar looked at his tactical display. Red warning lights were blinking all over the screen. The computer was identifying thousands of potential threats, from nuclear missiles to something called railgun projectiles that were being fired from orbital platforms. "Impossible," he said. "Their technology is primitive. They cannot threaten us." The first wave of missiles reached the alien ships just as the plasma cannons fired. The nuclear warheads detonated against the ship's energy shields, creating brilliant flashes of light visible from space. The shields held, but the ships rocked from the impact. More missiles followed. Cruise missiles from naval destroyers, ICBMs from land-based silos, anti-aircraft missiles from mobile launchers, even experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat. In the Pacific Ocean, the alien ship over Tokyo had fired its plasma cannon into the water, creating a massive steam explosion that sent waves toward the Japanese coast. But instead of cowering in terror, the Japanese military launched everything they had at the alien vessel. "Captain," Amy Watson watched the battle from her command center. The alien ship over Los Angeles was under attack from 3 different directions. F-22 Raptors from Edwards Air Force Base were firing missiles at its hull. The Navy was launching cruise missiles from ships off the coast. Even the National Guard had driven their missile launchers to the tops of buildings and were firing at the massive target. "Are we hurting them?" Sergeant Murphy asked. "Their shields are holding," Amy replied. "But look at this." She pointed to the tactical display. "They're not firing back. They're just sitting there taking it." She was right. The alien ships were absorbing the missile attacks but not returning fire. It was as if they were too surprised to fight back. Commander Vextar could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were not running away or hiding in their shelters. They were attacking, not just from one location, but from everywhere at once. His tactical display showed missile launches from 17 different countries, all targeting his fleet. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmissions from the planet's surface. They appear to be coordination signals. The humans are talking to each other. They're sharing targeting data, coordinating their attacks, and calling for more weapons." Vextar looked at the display showing Earth's surface. Thousands of red dots were moving toward his ships. Each dot represented a weapon designed to kill him and his crew. In his experience, primitive species either surrendered immediately or fought back with whatever crude weapons they had available. But these humans were doing something different. They were fighting back with everything they had all at once, in a coordinated attack that spanned their entire planet. "Sir," Officer Kleinix said quietly, "perhaps we should retreat and reassess." "No," Vextar said firmly. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not retreat from primitives." But even as he said it, he could see more missiles approaching on his display. The humans were not stopping. If anything, they were getting stronger. More weapons were being fired every minute. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vextar began to wonder if he had made a mistake. The humans were not acting like a primitive species. They were acting like a species that had been preparing for war their entire existence, and they were just getting started. The missiles had been flying for 15 minutes, and Commander Vextar was beginning to understand that these humans were different from every other species he had encountered. His shields were holding, but the attacks were not stopping. If anything, they were getting stronger and more coordinated. "Sir," Officer Kleinix reported, "the humans are adapting their tactics. They're using different types of weapons now." Vextar looked at his tactical display. The red dots representing human weapons had changed patterns. Instead of simple ballistic missiles, the humans were now firing things his computer could not identify. Some appeared to be solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. Others were beams of concentrated energy. "What are those?" he asked. "Unknown." "Sir, our databases have no match for these weapon types." In Chicago, construction worker Don Kelly was having the worst day of his life. He had been operating a crane when the alien ship appeared over the city, and now he was stuck 200 feet in the air watching missiles bounce off the thing's shields. The alien vessel was so close he could see details on its hull, and it was pointing some kind of weapon at the downtown area. Don had worked construction for 20 years, and he knew a few things about materials and energy. The alien ship was firing bright beams of light that seemed to cut through everything they touched, but Don noticed something interesting. When the light hit the reflective windows of the skyscrapers, it bounced back toward the ship. "That's it," he said to himself. Dan grabbed his radio and called every construction crew in the city. "Listen up, everybody. We need all the mirrors, lights, and reflective surfaces you can find. Bring them to the roof of the Sears Tower. We're going to give these aliens something to think about." Within 30 minutes, construction workers had assembled the largest collection of mirrors and spotlights in Chicago history. Don positioned them all to focus on a single point on the alien ship's hull. When he turned on the lights, the concentrated beam was so bright it could be seen from space. The alien ship's sensors were designed to handle the darkness of space, not the focused light of 10,000 mirrors and construction floodlights. The ship's computer systems crashed, and the vessel began to drift sideways, its pilot blinded by the intensity of the reflected light. "Direct hit," Dan said into his radio. "We got the bastard." At the same time, Captain Sue Torres was leading a squadron of F-22 Raptors in an attack on the alien ship over Los Angeles. The conventional missiles had not worked, so she was trying something that the flight manual definitely did not cover. "Okay, people," she said over the radio to her pilots, "we're going to fly straight at their weapons. When they fire, we're going to use the wings to redirect the beam back at them." "That's insane," replied Lieutenant Alex Murphy. "Everything about this day is insane," Sue replied. "But insane might be exactly what we need." The F-22s dove toward the alien ship in a tight formation. When the ship's plasma cannons fired, Sue rolled her aircraft and angled the wings to catch the beam. The special coating on the fighter's surface reflected the alien energy back toward the ship. The other pilots followed her lead, turning their aircraft into flying mirrors. The alien ship's own weapons struck its hull. The shields flickered and failed on one section, and human missiles immediately poured through the gap. The ship lurched and began to lose altitude. "Scratch one alien ship," Sue reported, but the most unexpected attack came from a completely different direction. In a basement in Seattle, computer programmer Tim Hayes was getting very angry. The aliens had interrupted his internet connection. And that was unforgivable. Tim had been working on network security for 15 years, and he knew how to use civilian infrastructure as a weapon. He started with a simple idea. If the aliens were monitoring human communications, maybe he could overload their systems. He began by hijacking every Wi-Fi router in the city. Then he took control of every cell phone tower. Within an hour, he had access to every satellite dish, radio antenna, and communication device on the West Coast. "Let's see how they handle this," he muttered, and began broadcasting. The aliens' communication systems were designed to intercept and translate simple radio signals. They were not prepared for the full power of human internet culture broadcast at maximum intensity. Tim sent them every video file, every image, every piece of data he could find. The aliens received cat videos at the speed of light. They were hit with millions of photos of people's breakfast. Their translation computers tried to process memes and failed spectacularly. Their communication officers were overwhelmed by something called rickrolling that seemed to be some kind of psychological warfare. Commander Vexstar watched his bridge crew struggle with the information overload. His communications officer was staring at a screen showing a dancing baby. His tactical officer was trying to understand why humans took so many pictures of their food. "Sir," Officer Kleinig said, "the humans appear to be using their civilian communication networks as weapons." "That's impossible," Vexstar replied. "Communication networks are for communication, not warfare. Tell that to the humans, sir." Things got worse when Tim Hayes realized he could access the aliens' own communication systems. Within minutes, he was broadcasting human internet content directly to every alien ship in the fleet. The aliens found themselves trying to process the entire contents of social media, video sharing sites, and online forums. The alien computer systems, designed for efficient military communication, crashed under the weight of billions of selfies, cooking videos, and political arguments. Half the alien fleet lost communication with the command ship, but what really terrified Commander Vexstar was watching how the humans coordinated their attacks. When conventional weapons failed, they adapted. When their military tactics did not work, they improvised. Construction workers became weapons specialists. Pilots turned their aircraft into guided missiles. Computer programmers launched cyber attacks using civilian infrastructure. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving reports from the other ships. The humans are using increasingly creative tactics. Ship 7 reports being attacked by something called construction equipment. Ship 12 is under assault by what appears to be civilian aircraft loaded with explosives." Vexstar looked at the display showing human population centers. In every city, people were working together to fight his fleet. They were not hiding in shelters or begging for mercy. They were taking apart their own infrastructure and turning it into weapons. These humans, he said slowly, they're not just fighting us, they're enjoying it. It was true. Across the planet, humans were discovering that they were very good at improvised warfare. Every human seemed to have a different idea about how to kill aliens, and they were all eager to try their theories. In New York, firefighters were using their high-pressure hoses to spray alien landing craft with industrial chemicals. In London, soccer hooligans were throwing Molotov cocktails at alien soldiers. In Tokyo, businessmen were using their briefcases as weapons. The aliens had expected a quick conquest of a primitive species. Instead, they were fighting a planet full of individuals who seemed to consider alien invasion a personal insult that required immediate and violent correction. "Sir," Officer Kleinig said urgently, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal." Commander Vextar looked at his tactical display. His fleet was under attack from directions he had never imagined. The humans were using everything from nuclear weapons to office supplies as instruments of war. They were coordinating attacks through social media. They were turning their own cities into weapons. Most importantly, they were not showing any signs of giving up. If anything, they seemed to be getting more creative and more determined with each passing minute. "No," he said firmly, "we are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not retreat from primitives." But even as he said it, he could see more improvised weapons being deployed against his fleet. The humans were not fighting like a primitive species. They were fighting like a species that had been preparing for war since the day they learned to use tools, and they had a lot of tools. The first alien ground forces landed in Phoenix just as the sun was setting. Commander Vextar had decided that if the humans wanted to fight, he would give them a ground war they could not win. His soldiers were equipped with advanced armor, energy weapons, and personal shields that could stop any primitive human weapon. The landing ships touched down in the desert outside the city, and 300 Zephyrian warriors emerged. They were 7 feet tall, covered in black armor that could deflect bullets, and armed with plasma rifles that could cut through steel. They had conquered ground forces on 43 worlds, and they expected this to be just as easy. They were wrong. The first human they encountered was Police Officer Rick Barnes, who was responding to reports of large objects landing in the desert. Rick had been a cop for 15 years, and he had seen everything from bank robberies to domestic disputes. But he had never seen anything like the tall, armored figures walking toward his patrol car. Rick drew his service weapon and fired. The bullets bounced off the alien armor like pebbles. The lead alien pointed his plasma rifle at Rick's car and fired. The energy beam cut through the engine block and melted the hood. Rick should have been terrified. Instead, he was angry. He grabbed his taser and fired the electrical probes at the alien soldier. The alien's personal shield was designed to stop bullets and energy beams, not electrical current. The taser delivered 50,000 volts directly to the alien's nervous system. The 7-foot warrior collapsed like a sack of grain. "Well, I'll be damned," Rick said. He immediately got on his radio. All units. The alien's armor can't handle tasers. Repeat, tasers work on the aliens." Within minutes, every police officer in Phoenix was being issued modified stun guns. The aliens had expected to fight a primitive military force. Instead, they found themselves being attacked by mall security guards, parking meter officers, and school crossing guards armed with electrical weapons. At the same time, something much more dangerous was happening at Phoenix General Hospital. Dr. Sarah Lopez had been working in the emergency room when the first alien prisoners were brought in. The creatures were unconscious from the taser attacks, and she was supposed to treat them, but as a veterinarian who had been helping at the hospital during the emergency, Sarah was more interested in studying them. She took blood samples, checked their vital signs, and made a discovery that would change everything. "They have no immune system," she said to Dr. Kevin Wright, the head of emergency medicine. "What do you mean?" "I mean they have no natural resistance to Earth bacteria. Their blood shows no antibodies, no white blood cells, nothing. They're completely defenseless against our diseases." Sarah immediately called the Centers for Disease Control. "We need to weaponize every common illness we have." Common cold, flu, food poisoning, everything. These aliens are sitting ducks? The CDC moved faster than they had ever moved in their history. Within an hour, they were distributing biological weapons that were nothing more than samples of everyday Earth bacteria. The alien sterile ship environment had not prepared them for the biological warfare that was simply breathing Earth's air. But the most devastating discovery came from an unexpected source. In Las Vegas, demolition expert Carl Martinez was watching the alien ships hover over the city when he noticed something interesting about their energy weapons. Carl had been blowing up buildings for 20 years, and he understood how energy moved through structures. The alien ships were firing directed energy beams that could cut through steel, but Carl realized the beams could be reflected and amplified using the right materials. "Get me every mirror in the city," he told his crew. And I mean every mirror. Hotel bathrooms, casino floors, department stores, everything. Carl had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. He was going to turn the entire Las Vegas Strip into a giant energy weapon using the aliens' own technology against them. His crew worked for 2 hours positioning mirrors on rooftops, angling them to create a complex network of reflected energy paths. When the alien ship fired its next plasma beam, the energy would be caught, focused, and redirected back at the ship with 10 times the original power. The plan worked perfectly. The alien plasma beam hit the first mirror, bounced to the second, then to the third, gathering energy with each reflection. By the time the beam reached the final mirror, it was powerful enough to cut through the alien ship's shields like paper. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from Colorado. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carl said into his radio, "Las Vegas has left the building." Commander Vextar watched his tactical display with growing horror. His ground forces were being defeated by civilian law enforcement. His soldiers were dying from exposure to common Earth bacteria. His ships were being destroyed by humans using mirrors and construction equipment. "Sir," Officer Kleinix reported, "we're receiving distress calls from all ground units. The humans appear to have found a way to penetrate our personal shields." "What about the biological attacks?" "Worse, sir. The humans are using their own diseases as weapons. Half of our ground forces are incapacitated by what they call seasonal allergies." Vextar could not believe what he was hearing. His advanced soldiers, equipped with the best technology in the galaxy, were being defeated by police officers with electrical weapons and civilians with head colds. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're also receiving reports that the humans are using their architecture as weapons. They're collapsing their own buildings to create energy reflectors. They're destroying their own cities to fight us?" "Yes, sir. They appear to consider this an acceptable trade-off." Vextar looked at the display showing Earth's surface. The humans were not just fighting his invasion force, they were dismantling their own civilization to use as weapons. They were turning their cities into battlefields, their infrastructure into artillery, and their diseases into biological warfare. Most terrifying of all, they were winning. In the past hour, he had lost 17 ships. His ground forces were in full retreat. His soldiers were dying from what humans called the common cold. His most advanced energy weapons were being turned against him by humans using bathroom mirrors. "Sir," Officer Kleinix said quietly, "I strongly recommend we consider a tactical withdrawal." "No," Vextar said, but his voice was not as confident as before. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not retreat." But even as he said it, he could see more human weapons being deployed. They were using everything from industrial chemicals to office supplies as instruments of war. They had turned their entire planet into a weapon, and they were not showing any signs of slowing down. In fact, they seemed to be getting more creative and more vicious with each passing minute. The humans were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for their right to exist as a free species, and they were very good at it. Commander Vextar had conquered 43 worlds, but he had never faced anything like this. The humans were not just soldiers. They were an entire species that had apparently been preparing for war since the day they learned to use tools. Every human seemed to be a warrior. Every human seemed to have a different idea about how to kill. Aliens. And every human seemed to be very eager to try their theories. For the first time in his 40-year military career, Commander Vexstar began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were not defenseless. They were terrifying. Commander Vexstar stood on his bridge and watched his empire's greatest military disaster unfold in real time. In the past hour, he had lost 47 ships to humans using mirrors, construction equipment, and electrical weapons. His ground forces were either dead from common Earth diseases or unconscious from being attacked by mall security guards with stun guns. "Sir," Officer Kleinig said urgently, "we must retreat immediately. The humans have found ways to counter all of our advantages." Vexstar looked at his tactical display. Red warning lights covered the screen. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by a species that had been using computers for less than a century. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. "Begin emergency retreat protocol," he said finally. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump." The order went out to the remaining ships of the Zephyrian fleet. Engines that had been designed to conquer galaxies now prepared to flee from a single planet. The hyperspace drives began charging, creating the energy signatures needed to escape Earth's gravity well, but the humans had one final surprise waiting for them. At NASA's Johnson Space Center, engineer Kelly Murphy had been tracking the alien ships since they first appeared. While everyone else was focused on fighting the invasion, she had been studying their technology. Kelly had spent her career working on spacecraft propulsion systems, and she recognized the energy patterns the alien ships were creating. "They're preparing to jump to hyperspace," she told her team. "But their drives work by creating a localized distortion in spacetime. If we can disrupt that distortion at the right moment, we can trap them here." Kelly had been working on experimental satellite technology that could manipulate electromagnetic fields in space. It was designed to clear space debris, but she realized it could be used to interfere with the aliens' hyperspace drives. "How long do we have?" asked Dr. Linda Chun, her assistant. "Maybe 10 minutes before they jump," Kelly replied. "Get me a direct link to every satellite in Earth orbit. Military, civilian, communications, weather, everything." Within minutes, Kelly had access to over 3,000 satellites. She began reprogramming them to work together as a single massive electromagnetic pulse generator. It was the largest coordinated satellite operation in human history. The alien ships began their hyperspace sequence. The lid vessels started to shimmer as they prepared to leave normal space. Commander Vexstar watched the countdown on his display. In 60 seconds, he would be free of this nightmare planet and its insane inhabitants. 50 seconds to hyperspace. "Jump," his navigation officer reported. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. Kelly Murphy watched her own countdown. She had to time this perfectly. If she fired the electromagnetic pulse too early, the aliens would have time to adjust. Too late, and they would escape. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Kelly pressed the button. Every satellite in Earth orbit fired its electromagnetic pulse at the same moment. The combined energy wave hit the alien fleet just as they were entering hyperspace. The space around the ships twisted and collapsed, trapping them between normal space and hyperspace. The alien ships found themselves stuck in what human scientists would later call a hyperspace bubble. They could not move forward into hyperspace, and they could not return to normal space. They were trapped in Earth's gravity well with no way to escape. "Sir," Officer Kleinig said in panic, "the hyperspace drive is not responding. We're caught in some kind of space-time distortion." Commander Vexstar looked at his instruments. The humans had somehow managed to trap his entire fleet using technology that should not have existed on a primitive planet. His ships were sitting ducks, unable to move or defend themselves. "How is this possible?" he asked. "The humans appear to have coordinated their orbital satellites to create an electromagnetic interference pattern," his science officer reported. "They've turned their entire satellite network into a single weapon." The final battle did not last long. Human military forces launched everything they had at the trapped alien ships. Nuclear missiles, conventional weapons, and dozens of improvised devices that had been created in the past hour. The aliens' shields were already weakened from constant fighting, and they could not maneuver to avoid the attacks. One by one, the alien ships were destroyed. The few that survived the missile attacks were finished off by humans using increasingly creative methods. Construction workers dropped buildings on them. Pilots flew aircraft loaded with explosives directly into their hulls. Scientists fired experimental weapons that turned alien armor into pudding. The last alien ship crashed into the Atlantic Ocean 57 minutes after the first hyperspace jump attempt. Commander Vextar survived long enough to send one final message to the Zephyrian Empire. "Do not come to Earth," he transmitted. "These humans are not primitive. They are not weak. They have weaponized their entire planet and everyone on it. They do not surrender. They do not negotiate. They fight with everything they have, and they fight like they enjoy it. Stay away from Earth. Stay away from the humans." The message was his last act. His ship sank beneath the waves, taking with it the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. President Lisa Campbell stood before the cameras once again. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth had been joined by a new banner, a simple blue flag with a white circle representing Earth. The united defense of the planet had created something that had never existed before, a truly global human government. "To any alien civilizations listening to this message," she began, "Earth is the home of humanity. We are not looking for a fight, but we are ready for one. You are welcome to visit our planet in peace. You are welcome to trade with us, to learn from us, to be our friends." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But if you come here planning to conquer us, you better plan to stay forever, because you will not be leaving. We have proven today that Earth is not just another planet to be conquered. It is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have." The message was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. Within hours, it had been received by dozens of alien civilizations. The response was immediate and universal. Earth was added to the galactic list of planets that were not worth the trouble. But humanity's victory celebration was cut short by a disturbing discovery. The alien ships had been carrying databanks with information about the Zephyrian Empire. According to the files, the force that had just been defeated was not an invasion. It was a scouting party. The main Zephyrian invasion force consisted of over 10,000 ships and would arrive at Earth in exactly 72 hours. The aliens had expected their scouts to conquer the planet quickly and send back intelligence about human defenses. Instead, they would find no intelligence, no conquered planet, and no surviving scouts. They would find only a species that had proven it could turn an entire planet into a weapon in less than 1 hour. President Campbell read the intelligence report and smiled. The aliens thought they were sending a larger force to finish what their scouts had started. But they were wrong. They were not sending a larger force to conquer Earth. They were sending a larger force to be destroyed by Earth. Humanity had exactly 72 hours to prepare for the real invasion, but they were not worried. They had learned something important about themselves in the past hour. They were very good at killing aliens, and they were about to get a lot more practice.